Hi, my name is Jessica Beha, and I am one of the prevention education specialists with Great Rivers Regional System for Addiction Care. And we are continuing our This Is My Story series. And today we're here with Terry. And Terry is going to tell his story today about being in recovery. And so, Terry, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you.
Thanks, Jessica. Well, as Jessica said, my name is Terry, and I'm a person in long-term recovery. Um, been in recovery now for over 8 years. Working on, year number 9. Um, the way that I was taught with this process is to, talk about what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. So, um, I was born in Houston, Texas, raised by a single mother. Um, didn't have much communication with my father growing up. But I had other father figures that stepped into play and did the best they could to raise me as best as they could. So always, you know, committed to making good grades. That was heavily enforced in the house. So I had to make good grades in order to play ball, and I like playing ball, and so I did that to the best of my ability. And so, education plays a significant part of my story just because, um, I'm a mama's boy at heart. And so when it came time to make decisions to further my education out of high school, I had a lot of offers to go to different places and chose not to because I was scared to leave, uh, you know, my mother behind. And with being raised by a single parent, we weren't just mother and son, but we were really really close friends. And um, part of me would have felt I don't know the best word, maybe guilty to leave someone who was still single at that time behind. So I had offers from Notre Dame, University of North Carolina, Miami Hurricanes. Um, None of them were for athletics, but you know, well known for their athletics. But so like business law and stuff like that. But I didn't spend enough time in high school to really think about what I was good at to make a move towards education, to really think about what career path that would set me on. So um, and part of that reason was because partying was becoming more prevalent in my life. Um, and so what was recreation and a time to get together with friends, um, it started to increase, I guess, by the time I did go to college. So ended up at Marshall for a couple years. Um, going to class wasn't my best strong suit. Um, so it just didn't work out at that time. And the reason for that was because I didn't understand how that education was going to prep me for what I wanted to do as far as a career. So apparently you have to really think about those things. And at that moment I wasn't mature enough um, to think about what it is that I really wanted to do as far as a career. So my identity was constantly with sports and grades. But you know when sports left and then the grades started to deteriorate as well, I really was left with, I didn't know who I was. So at the high school that I went to, which was Chesapeake High School over in Ohio, small school, easy to fit in. um, I got to Marshall and it was just a lot of people. And um, I guess in my own world, I wasn't as important, and like looking back at it now, I can see um, that for some reason I just didn't feel like uh, I had the same prestige, I guess, as there. So um, I lost motivation really at that point, um, and started making some, more poor decisions. And um, oftentimes in recovery, we talk about, these moments of clarity and realizing, waking up one day and starting to realize that, life's, starting to pass us by. And in my mind, what I was missing was, discipline. Um, at that point, it was just discipline. So I made a decision to, go to the military. I knew that they would help me with that, and they did. Um, but once again, I was making a decision because I knew I needed help in some sort of way, but I didn't necessarily know what that help was going to look like. So, from early in the morning till that in evening, some of the guys that were in my chain of command said they couldn't ask for a better soldier, and then they never knew what I was going to do outside of those hours, so because I was ornery still, and um, learned a bunch of values, but the application of those values were just suspect at that point. Um, I was lacking personal accountability, is what I was lacking, and I couldn't see it quite yet that the drinking and the partying were consuming my life to where um, it was interfering with what my goals and objectives were. So, after a stint with that and starting to realize that my choices were now starting to affect personal relationships, mainly with family, because when I came home, really good shape, the muscles started to fall off fast. Um, it was just noticeable. So basically, a family intervention, um, very similar to what you see on TV. My uncle, who is kind of like an older brother to me, and my mother set me down and basically said, with tough love, you can continue to do this, but we're not going to watch you kill yourself, because it's killing us to watch it. And I understood what they were saying to a degree, but then part of my denial said that, I'll just slow down. And but given the ultimatum of, losing family, starting to see, by this time, was around 30 years old, 29, 30 years old, and didn't have much to show, uh, you know, as an adult for, things, everything that I had, I was starting to lose, vehicles, whatever it may be. So, I didn't have a whole lot going on. So, my mom came home one day and said, "I got great news. You got a bed at a recovery center." And um, while it was like Christmas for her, because she had so much hope that they could help me, because a few of her friends and family friends had um, nephews, grandsons that were in the same boat, and they had found help um, and hope. And so she knew it was possible if I was ready. And so, I was scared and and honestly didn't know that if I was even at a point in my life that I wanted to change that part. There was other parts of my character that I wanted to change, but I really didn't want to leave the substances alone quite yet. And but there was nowhere else to go. So um, made a commitment to go. Now that is not saying that from that day forward I did it perfectly and right at all. But fortunately, the place that was providing me the help at the time were patient, with me and taught me a better way to live. But a lot of that was just through empathy and compassion, knowing that it was gonna take time to change character, and it was gonna take time to build that personal accountability um, to where I could, start making better choices for myself. So, I'm a firm believer in peer-driven models. I'm a firm believer in uh, clinical settings. Whatever provides somebody the opportunity to be honest about what is really going on. Um, Transparency has been, um, a lifesaver for me. Um, I don't shy away from, talking about building a relationship with God. Um, that for me has been the, foundation of the recovery process for me. And what that does is it gives me enough time to get focused in the morning throughout my day and of an evening to reflect, to hold myself accountable to something bigger and better than me. And I think that's where a lot of times the inspiration comes from, is that gratitude that God's given me another day to do the best I can with what I have. And that's the process for me. It's a whole lot of soul cleansing. It's a whole lot of what I can do to try to help somebody else out, and a whole lot of remembering, what it was like to not have any kind of faith or courage to face life for what it is and not what I want it to be. And the cool thing is in recovery, a lot of times what I want it to be is tangible, and it happens that way, just based on what my perception is. So I can remember uh, basically demanding, which sounds funny, but I had these demands from God that I wanted. Um, and it was basically, if you give me the right vehicle, the right house, the right woman, specifically a son, if you give me all these things, I'll change. And so what God did for me was, he gave me an opportunity to change, and then all of those things have happened. So, um, yeah, it's I'm blessed, um, to have the opportunity to engage in things like this, and um, do my best to inspire somebody else. I used to think that I had to say all these profound things and, um, you know, have this perfect message, right? And what I've found is just, I've had a few well, a lot of good influences, but a guy that talks to me about the ways of giving and receiving love, um, and that if I'll actually listen, not listen to respond, just really listen, um, people will teach me how to treat them. And I try to practice that to the best of my ability. I really do. Um, Recovery is, uh, it's not just like a box that my recovery's over here, my life's over here, my work's here, being a parent's here. Like it's not like it. Everything fits inside of my recovery, because um, when I'm doing what's right in the recovery process, all of those things just flow. I'm a better employee. I'm a better father. I'm a better husband, when my focus is on my relationship with God. And um, but when I don't do that, and I put all of those things first rather than it going through Him to me, I start picking things apart. I try to fix everything, and instead of just going with the flow and being easygoing and letting it happen, the way that it's supposed to, not the way that I'm trying to force it. So life is good. You know, that's the one thing is that I would want to try to get out the best way as possible. Is, I thought that by entering recovery, I was going to become a square, and I wasn't going to laugh. I wasn't going to have a sense of humor. I wasn't going to be able to find things to do. Like, what do you do if you're not, drinking or getting high, right? And the cool thing is I do a lot of the same stuff. I'll just remember it, which is good. I can't, I couldn't even count the number of trips that I've made across the country that I just didn't remember because I was too intoxicated. And so today I get to remember those things. I get to appreciate the value of life and all the things that it holds. Sounds, smells. All of those things were just not. I just didn't think about it. I was too consumed by my selfish motives to really appreciate the environment, around me. And some of that was because some of the environments weren't so healthy, and the truth would have really hurt at that point, to realize where I was at. So that's what happened. What happened is the truth ended up setting me free in the long run. I mean, I know that sounds cliche, but it's real. To accept life for what it was at that time, and to accept the responsibility of my own actions, and to accept the fact that it is what it is, but it can change and it will change if I'm willing to put in some work and really think about, practicing some spiritual principles and getting down with accepting, that God's will. So, what it's like today. I've named a few of them. I'm blessed to be a father to a son, just like I asked. I've got a really good job working for a company that I love. I get to do a little bit of everything, which makes my days just flow, and it's never boring. There's always something new and innovative and thoughtful, and I get to do things with businesses that are helping people all over the country now, and seeing what that scope looks like in Kansas and Texas and Missouri and Kentucky and all these places. So I'm honored to work for West Virginia Sober Living and Ascension, and to be an alumni of Recovery Point or the Healing Place, and to stay engaged and try to be of service where I can there. And the friends that I have today, that most of them are through the recovery process, and a lot of my coworkers are some of my closest friends, and we never use our friendship against each other. It's really a motivator to do more so that we keep that value of our friendship. So those are all things that before weren't really possible. God's good. It's I didn't realize that before that the guilt and shame that I was packing around, I just didn't think I was worthy of his love, and to know now that I don't have to indulge in any of those activities anymore. I don't have to treat people that way anymore. I feel like I'm trying to make an amends to God every day by the way I choose to live with his help. And that's a standard, for me on a daily basis, is how much of him can I let shine through me, and if that does help somebody, great. And if it doesn't, I'll give it a go tomorrow, and but I'm fortunate. I've listened to a lot of stories in recovery, I have a supportive family. My mom is a wonderful person. I've still got my grandparents. I've got really great family members that have built trust, with me again, and that's been awesome. And I've got a great wife, um, a stepdaughter, son. I have some material things, but what I value the most is just, the love of the people around me, and do my best to share that is the best way that I can. Um, so I appreciate you asking me to talk. I could go on and on, but my hope is that um, somebody may see this and say, "Well, it's easy for him to say it, that I don't think that'll work for me." But if you would have saw me 8.5 years ago, uh, if you could see my detox picture and what that hell looked like, it's possible. Anything is possible. Um, so that's the hope. I hope somebody sees this and decides that today's the day I want to go do something different. So thanks, Jessica.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Terry, for sharing your story. And I love what you said. If someone sees this, even if it's just one person, it's worth it. And so thank you so much for sharing your story. If anybody is interested in getting in contact with Terry, please reach out to us on the Great Rivers page. We'd be more than happy to connect you guys with him. And again, Terry, thank you so much for sharing your story. We truly appreciate it.
Absolutely, anytime.